Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our exclusive Global Leading Voices webinar campaign. We are delighted to have you join us here today. Please be informed that if you have any questions during the presentation, you may type them into the question box in your control panel. The presenter will answer your questions at the end of the presentation accordingly. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our presenter, who will begin shortly.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're located. We're looking forward to presenting this webinar for you. It's all about information security going into the future. We're almost at the border of 2024, the next year. And so Loris Manciamina and myself will be presenting on some current issues and some things to look forward to when it comes to these standards that you see here on screen. I'll share a few slides around what our background is and how we fit with PCB, and we look forward to sharing that with you. So, Loris, do you want to say hi, and then I'll go through our slides?
Hi, everyone. I'm Loris Manciamina, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this moment with you and the company of Rinske. And I'm very glad to share this moment with you. Thank you.
All right. So the agenda for today, we're going to do a little bit of our introductions. Loris will be initially talking about common cyber attacks in, well, pretty much the last 12 months, but even beyond that, I guess. So some of the current ones that maybe you have been affected by as an organization, or maybe if you're a consultant, you may have had to guide an organization through while they were under that type of attack. Or maybe you were just planning for those types of threats and using some of the ISO standards to help organizations, either your own or an organization of a client. Maybe you help them prepare for these types of attacks in that way. Then I'll do my introduction, which is mainly around key benefits of ISO compliance and also some of my own background. And then I'll go through the people and process aspects of the two standards that we mentioned earlier, the ISO 27001, Information Security Management, and the ISO 27035, which is all about incident management in information security. And I'll also look a little bit at the cyber resilience strategies for 2024 in the context of people and process aspects. And then Loris will be covering the technical aspects around those same two standards, so the 27001, 27035, and he will also look at cyber resilience strategies, but from that technical angle. And he will also be sharing some case studies, so some actual events and responses and good practices. And then we'll finish with Q&A. So please keep those questions, those comments coming through, and we will be, of course, going through as many as we can at the end of this webinar. And what you can't get answered, maybe you can ask Loris or myself in other types of interactions through the PCB LinkedIn page. There's always discussions happening there that we are always monitoring, so we can also give you some answers and guidance there. And maybe we can learn as much from you guys as we will be sharing in this session. So through those LinkedIn networks and also through some of your comments and questions that you may be having at the end of this webinar. All right, so let's have a look at some of the initial aspects around my background. So you see there are some of the standards that I work with in my world, in my life as a consultant, principal consultant and MD of business as usual. Since 2006, I've been working independently as a self-employed consultant. I started a business called Business as Usual, doing mostly risk management, so enterprise risk, but also business continuity management. And flowing on from that was then ISO 27001, the information security field. So whilst you can see in there the 22301, which is the ISO standard around business continuity, you can also see some of those different topics there because they're all kind of interrelated in the practical sense. So you can see there business continuity, but also the lead risk manager level that I've got in ISO 31000, the ISO 27001 master, but also 22361 senior lead crisis manager. Some of you may have not heard about that standard ever before, but it is actually a brand new one. Since last year, it's been in existence. We've been actually offering it through PCB in the very first moments whilst it came out. Some of you may have met me and also met each other in the conferences of PCB, the physical conferences, the classroom ones, where we get together. And that's where you would have possibly been exposed to that 22361 standard as well. And that's a broader crisis management standard, right? So information security, like what we're talking about today, and cybersecurity, they could lead to business crises, of course. And that's where there's some of these additional standards that you might consider as an organization. Now you can also see a few other ones that are at different levels. So I've got some other certifications around ISO 27032, cyber risk, and also 22316, which is organizational resilience. And then some other standards, as you can see, ITIL and COBIT, some of you may be familiar with in your world in the IT context. You can see some of my background in there. I've worked across really 5 continents in business continuity, information security, and risk management. Some of the key clients that I've had are central banks, but also a lot of organizations in the retail space, in manufacturing, in insurance, in hospitality, and also that sort of mid-sized to larger government entities, as you can see there. And some of the awards that I've collected along the way, so that was fun too. And what I wanted to highlight in this mini introduction, before I hand over to Loris for his introduction, I wanted to highlight the benefits of ISO compliance in context of course, your security and your confidence and your sense of security and safety when you have all your information managed properly in terms of security. So that doesn't actually just stop with ISO 27001 or the ISO 27 family, but also securing your information in all forms also comes back in some of the other standards I mentioned. So ISO 31000, that's also got components in there on how to make sure your information gets managed properly. Who's able to access that information, and also how you maintain and update those frameworks. And the same with business continuity. You might have had some ISO, well, some maybe not ISO standards, but other standards around disaster recovery, IT disaster recovery. That's also interlinking with the world of information security. And so DARM is a concept that we still use. It might sound a little old-fashioned because most people now are using cloud-based services, and we think, oh, disaster recovery is now someone else's problem, the cloud provider's problem. The same with some people, they talk the same way around security, as if the cloud provider now is responsible end-to-end for all the security of their information. And, you know, on a technical level, that could be the case. But when it comes to your own staff, your own people, your own interactions with other people, your business, how shall I say, the golden nuggets, you know, your most important crown jewels as a business, you as your organization can only determine which they are, and what, in the context of business continuity, what are your manual workarounds? You know, so for example, if ransomware was to affect your business and you can't access your data, okay, what manual workarounds do you have? And that's not really a technology question. That is more a business question, a business continuity question. So when it comes to security of information, that statement there, the first bullet, is a little broader than just information security, technical controls. It goes into more the people and process controls as well. And it's information in all forms. You know, it is also, for example, paper-based information, but even conversations you might be having in non-secured spaces, on the train or on the bus, for example. That is also information sharing that could be vulnerable to eavesdropping, for example. So it sounds a bit strange because we always think, oh, the ISO standards, the ISO 27001, it's all about cybersecurity. But information security is actually the scope of the ISO 27001. And that means it's information in all forms. Also, some other benefits of ISO compliance, of course, increasing your attack resilience. So when something happens, what's your cyber incident response plan? What's your business continuity plan? And resilience is not just about going back to what you had before. So restoring your data and plugging your systems back in, or getting your staff to work with the same applications. Sometimes we find organizations bouncing forward, not bouncing back, but actually bouncing forward. And that's what resilience is all about. It's like, hey, we're affected by something, but we're responding in a creative, innovative way where actually we're coming out of this potentially better than we were before. And so that's what resilience refers to. And that's one of the most exciting parts of the whole world of risk management, if you ask me, because people always think about, how can we get back to normal? But this one is more, what benefit can we gain? Yeah, so for example, Netflix or organizations like Uber or Grab, if you're in the Asia region, for example, you would have seen some organizations beefing up their system capabilities, their security, their VPN compatibility and things like that to actually be able to say, hey, we can offer our product or service in a different way to different customers. Uber is a good example because, for example, they started offering services around delivery of food during the pandemic, and not just what they did before is using passengers as the product to move around. You know, they initially were set up to be some sort of taxi service for people. They changed it to become a taxi service for food and other products. And so that was in response to some challenges. So that's what we would call resilience. And especially if you then back it up with the right security and safety and the ways that people can use your system, that's a real resilient way to go through life as a business. All right, so some of the other benefits are reducing information security costs, especially if you do it efficiently with sometimes cloud providers engaged, but also having maybe a pooled situation where you have multiple applications supported on one server, on one technical environment that is nicely secured to the appropriate levels for your organization, and getting economies of scale, some benefits out of that, the fact that you're combining that onto one particular environment. Responding to evolving security threats is, of course, a major benefit of ISO standards as well, especially those standards that we're talking about today. Improving company culture, and that is all about getting your people engaged in the process rather than just thinking, I'll put technical controls in place. Culture is all about people and how they work with it and how they work together with it. And so that's also one of the more interesting part of this kind of work that we do. Offering organization-wide protection, so it's end-to-end. Most ISO standards say that they're applicable to any size organization, any type of organization, that it's end-to-end protection. It's not just one department. You can roll an ISO standard out to your whole organization, internationally, nationally, locally, or maybe you initially start with one site and clearly state that, of course, in your certification process, if you do certification. Because otherwise it becomes false marketing. That's not allowed. But if you first pick one scope of one business process or one service or one location or one country that you're operating in, that is also absolutely fine, because it is not the easiest thing to roll ISO standards out in parallel to your whole organization internationally, etc. It is an intensive process to do it properly, and so sometimes that scope is a little bit smaller. It also provides a central framework. So ISO standards kind of provide a language, a lingo around your processes, and protect confidentiality of data. You'll learn a little bit more about the C, I, and A, especially in the ISO 27001 standard, where it's all about confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. Confidentiality is, of course, got a major focus, but your availability of data we talked about earlier, to say we're securing your information, we're making sure it's available to the right people, you know, with a good response plan and resilience. So that means you're actually also addressing availability of data with a good DR plan, for example. So competitive advantage is the final one there. You see pretty much in all organizations, in all countries that I see these days, there's actually quite a heavy requirement on external vendors when it comes to being able to service the client organization in a secure way. And so, for example, the ISO requirement, it may not be stated as a fixed way to implement processes, but it certainly helps to impress customers and other people who you're tendering with work with. For example, if you're actually trying to get new projects as an organization and you need to impress your customers or insurers, it gives you competitive advantage to be able to show that you're ISO compliant. It's a quick snapshot for other organizations to see that you've implemented these processes, especially if you've got certification, because then it's externally, independently assessed that you've got these processes in place. So that's a little intro for myself. I'm going to hand over now to Loris for his background, his introduction, and he's going to talk further about some of those emerging and also past threats when it comes to 2023 and what information security threats were prevalent. So Loris, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you very much, Rinske, for this intro. I'm Loris Mantiamina. I'm a manager at EY in the Central Africa in DRC, and I'm responsible for advisory, IT advisory activities in the region of Central Africa, based mainly in Kinshasa, with specializing in technology risks and various issues related to the technological, and organizational consulting. So over 10 years, just working on consulting experience, mainly in that region, but mainly in the implementation of ISO 20 and 27 families. So with many experience in implementation and certification preparation as well, when we have to assist clients in the certification parts of the ISO standards. Also in the GRC perspectives, we are assisting also clients, most of them in banking sector and mining sector as well, in the way that they can organize the IT functions and other business entity and units within the organization, in order to make sure that there is a kind of synergy in the business and working across this organization for all departments. Also for some IT or digital transformation strategy as well, for many sectors, going from banking to industries as well, and telco as well. And I have also some technical aspects, assignments around also risk matter on the ISO 27005, when we are assisting clients to put in place a risk assessment management process, so that we can make sure that the risks are very overseen in the internal and the whole organization when it comes to deal with some technical risks and technological risk aspects. Also for the business continuity as well, we have also implement some business continuity process in the completion, or to complement also ISO 27001 implementation, in order to give an holistic approach that we can, when it comes to deal with continuity, business continuity aspects within the organization. And for also audits, ISO audits, I can say that we have also managed some assignment on ISO audits regarding the ISO 19011. So briefly is my background from in the aspect of consulting team where I am from. So next. Yeah, to start is that here we have just summarized top 10 of cybersecurity threats in 2023 that has raised over this year in order to get prepared with two for the next year for 2024. And we have also this top 10 cybersecurity threats that, as reports to Unbroker, is a kind of study that has been done by Unbroker, where they have listed at the order of the occurrence. We start by social engineering. That is the common cybersecurity threats that are based on data as a cause effects from as a source causes by the human error or the human advertence. Here, the social engineering here states on how we can just how can people or the human or the employee can be aware of any kind of phishing, for example, email that they can get from the inbox, and how they have just to respond to those phishing, because most of the time we are facing that the fact that employer does not how to deal with any suspicious email that's come in box. So that's why in some error or an information that they can misinformation that they can have regarding those suspicious email, they can just click even in any kind of content to be cut in this cyber threats. But the second one is the third-party exposure. The third-party exposure here is a kind of criminal that can get around security system by hacking less protected network belonging to third party that have privileged access to hackers' primary targets. So one major example of a third-party threats occurred at the beginning of the 2021 when hackers leaked personal data from over 214 million Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts. The hackers were able to access the data by breaching a third-party contractor called SocialLark that was employed by all three companies and had a privileged access to their network. So for the 2023, third-party breaches become an even more pressing threat as companies increasingly turn in the independent contractor to complete work once handled by full-time employees. So network access continues to be a focus for criminal organizations. So that's why we have just to make sure that we have also put in place third-party risk management control, so that we can make sure that the third party has a minimum level of security when it comes to deal with through all those kind of control in the contracts, so that we can know the security level for our organization versus the security level of the third party level as well. For the third cybersecurity threat, a configuration mistakes. Here is the main point of this security threat is that sometimes when it comes to acquire a new app or a new software, we have to make sure that we have sufficient understanding of the way to use this app, and the second point is the way to use some configuration that is proper and appropriate for this app. But sometimes, most of the time, IT guys just try to do an assessment on how to use the app before acquiring them, but ignoring sometimes what could be some configuration or appropriate configuration that could be also used for the benefit of the organization. Also, to know the kind of configuration to test also the effectiveness of some configuration that will be led to be implemented in our organization, if it will be appropriate for our internal configuration or not, and otherwise how we can deal with some gap assessment that we can do between those configuration requirements. The poor cyber agent is referred to irregular habits and practice regarding technology use, like avoiding unprotected Wi-Fi networks and implementing software like a VPN or multi-factor authentication. Unfortunately, research shows that many people's cyber agent habits leave a lot to be desired. Nearly 60% of organizations rely on human memory to manage passwords, and 42% of organizations manage passwords using sticky notes. More than half, or 54% of IT professionals do not require the use of two multi-factor authentication for access the company account. So it's a very huge problem when it comes to use some habits or to use some privilege that we can put in place in order to access, for example, an IT assets or an IT services. We have to make sure that the access management is more effective in order to save. The more we can do the whole information asset within the organization. For example, when it comes to get access, we have to make sure that all due diligence or diligence regarding the security of the access, or how we can have to deal with credentials or passwords, is very managed by the person, so that we can make sure that our information assets is more secure. Regarding the cloud vulnerability, here the cloud vulnerability is a kind of emerging technology. When we can just understand that IT information systems are not totally managed by the organization, but is a part of the IT system is managed by a third party. So this technology has brought many cybersecurity threats. For example, in Unbroker study reports that IBM that vulnerability has raised with the use of these cloud vulnerabilities. IBM reports that 150% in the last 5 years has been raised by the cloud vulnerabilities. So cloud vulnerability has raised from 150 of during over these 5 years. So according to Gartner, cloud security is currently the fastest growing cybersecurity market segment, with a 41% increase from 5,095 billion in 2022 to 841 million in 2021. So we can just notice that there is a continual increase of this cloud vulnerability, as many companies here are going to use this cloud technology over this year. For the sixth point regarding the mobile device vulnerabilities, as we have just to externalize some organization service to our mobile or our mobile device vulnerability related to the use of mobile device has also increased since the COVID pandemic as well. So the most important here is to know that we have to pay a very attention about the use of mobile, because when it comes any death or unsecure access or poor access to the organization tools or services, will be the subjects of, or will be impacted to this vulnerability as well. When it comes to talk about also Internet of Things today is the involving also technology that we have to just give some autonomy to the device within any organization, to make sure that human efforts is less involved in doing something. So today we can just understand that those threats has increased to the almost 70% of the household have at least one, for example, smart device. But the difficulties here is that we have recorded more than 12,000 hacking attempts since a single week of the October during this year. It seems it's very important for us to know how to use and how to aware people, and to aware people in the use of Internet of Things, in order to make sure that people are aware of what can be all those vulnerability or the exposure that we can be to by the using of this technology of Internet of Things. Ransomware as well, it will be also in the 8th position. So ransomware as well, it's very time and time is increasing significantly, as that as we said with before, social engineering give the opportunity to ransomware to operate easily once the hacker gets access to the information of the company or personal information, and asking some ransom before giving you back all data that has been stolen. Poor data management, we say that regarding the fact that data management is about more than just keeping your storage and organization system tidy. To put things in perspective, an amount of data created by consumer double every 4 years, but more than half of the new data is never used and analyzed. So here we are just managing the big data and the structured data. So there is some data that could be not very necessary, rather the other that can be it's a kind of how we organize the data in order to be useful for the organization. So if there is no organization, there is no any organization that could be help organization to be more effective by using its data. It's a kind of threat that could be not benefit for the organization. Also, inadequate post-attack procedure. Here, for example, it is a kind of how you coordinate also the attacks and post-attacks within the organization. If the team is not well structured and well organized, so it will be very difficult also to be efficient and to be effective when it comes to deal with, for example, the way we can handle the attack after its occurrence. So thank you.
Thanks, Loris. Yeah, you would have already started to hear a lot of comments around users and around people, about the controls that really rely on individuals doing the right thing, whether it's staff, whether it's customers who are interacting with your system, whether it's other third parties. It's really appearing to be not just fixable with technical controls, as long as everyone really understands that. And I think from what you heard Loris share already, that's becoming quite clear. Now, we also need to understand that when we are managing information security, there's always a lot of focus or an illusion that we can actually prevent, that we can really reduce the likelihood of an incident. Now, that is maybe the case for very predictable situations like other business continuity type events, for example, floods and fires. And whilst we can't prevent the cause, we can certainly understand the impacts very well and put impact reducing controls in place. For example, for fire, you might have tested your fire extinguishers and things like that. And for floods, you might have to have a good cleanup process. But for cyber attacks, anything to do with information security, we don't even know what's around the corner. So to have the illusion that you can actually prevent is not the most intelligent thing to do, I think. And we saw these things with ransomware attacks. The first ones that happened, I asked customers, I asked organizations, I said, did you have ransomware, any type of attack to do with ransom, did you have that in your risk register? And when the first attack happened, this is around the time of WannaCry and Pedia, 90% or more of the clients I spoke to said we didn't even know it was a threat. So you don't even know yet what's around the corner with information security often, and that's why it's so hard to be confident about reducing likelihood. So that means we need cyber incident response plans, and that's what ISIM is all about: information security and security incident management. So actually assuming that an attack could happen, therefore we do need things in place, we need to be able to respond, we need to have the best practices, we need testing, we need simulations, we need training of staff, we need training of your incident response teams, even your crisis management teams, if the actual attack becomes a serious business threat in terms of your reputation, for example, or your end-to-end business continuity. In all those situations, we do need a good incident response plan. And so those standards, they go hand in hand. It's like you have your information security end-to-end process with your ISO 27001, which touches on prevention, on management, on monitoring, on testing, but also on incident response. And to zoom into that with more best practices, we have that ISO 27035 incident management. And that will give you that resilient approach. So what I've done in the next slides that I'll present is to highlight of the ISO 27001, the latest version of that standard, which is the 2022 standard from last year. That version, I've highlighted a number of sections where it's actually to manage the controls and the clauses and to be confident about your implementation, which parts actually have to do with process and people aspects, as opposed to technical controls, technical prevention kind of methods or technical response procedures. So I'm zooming into that process and people side. And I actually was surprised myself because I started highlighting of the whole entire list of clauses and controls, all the items that have to do with process and people. And it was overwhelming. It was pretty much 70–80% of the entire standard, which had something to do with people. So let's have a look. In yellow here, I've highlighted all those items that have something to do where people and processes are mostly important. So the general clauses of the standard you can see here on screen. You can see understanding the organization and its context, understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties, determining the scope of the system, information security management system, which system means process, right? It's not technical tool or something, not application. We're talking about the management system here. Leadership, commitment, policy, organizational roles, responsibilities, authorities, actions to address the risks and the opportunities. You can see here already the whole list I've just regurgitated. There's all of them actually have more something to do with business, with processes, with relationships, with training of staff, training and awareness of general workforce. And so, yeah, it's already appearing that many of these aspects are not just technical fixes that you can implement. So if we continue on, you can see some other things around risk assessment, planning of changes, support in terms of resourcing, competencies, awareness, communication protocols. All of that you can see there, it's actually a lot to do with people. On the right-hand side, for comparison's sake, I've put in the 2013 version of the ISO 27001, because many of you will be working with organizations that have not migrated yet. There is some lead time that they've got to do that. For example, for the next recertification audit, if they are a certified organization, the next recertification audit is the time where they really have to have the new version of the ISO 27001 standard. But until such time, you might have some clients who were just certified in the 2013 version. I've got one organization that, for example, is still on that version because they were certified in 2022. And so by 2025, they have to have their recertification audit, and that's when they will have to have that recent version of the ISO 27001 standard. So for that reason, I've put in both, because some of you will be going, what are all these standard, these clauses and controls, especially the Annex A controls, they look a little bit different, quite substantially different between that older and new version of the standard. Let's have a look at the next list down. You can see there document control, creating and updating of documents, things like operational planning and control. Information monitoring and performance evaluation. So monitoring of the system, of the management system, internal audits, etc., etc. You can see how much here actually is something to do with the business processes. And that's pretty much all of them in this particular sheet as well. Now, the interesting part here is that Annex, as I mentioned, it's different for this new version of the ISO 27001 standard. It's actually 4 groupings, so that's organizational controls. And guess what? They also have a lot of people and process aspects to them. Segregation of duties, management responsibilities, contact with authorities, a whole range of things, threat intelligence. Those aspects are really not just to actually get resolved by a technical control, but also a lot with people and process aspects. Now, when it comes to classification of information, the 5.12, for example, there's a bit of a a hybrid approach normally. We see more and more technical tools to do classification of documents, for example. You may have a version of Microsoft Word where you can actually highlight that in a document to say, is this a classified, is it a sensitive document? Can this be shared internally or also externally? You can label that within documents. So that is a technical aspect, a technical tool in there. But to choose the right labeling is a people aspect. Someone in the organization needs to train the staff into say, what would you say is sensitive information? What are the criteria for that? And they're typically business related criteria. So once again, there's a strong element there of a people and process aspect. Continuing on with those organizational controls, you can see here a whole bunch of them, like around access rights. You see ICT, readiness for business continuity, a whole range of different controls. And then the people controls, of course, they are heavily related to people and processes as well. So background screening of your staff, for example. Things like disciplinary processes if a staff member does not do the right thing. Confidentiality, remote working, all those criteria and aspects around how to do it, they actually rely on people and processes as well. And then we've got physical controls, which is a blend of those more solid hardware/software related ones, but again, with awareness and training around the people aspects. So for example, clear desk and clear screen. Yeah, that's something that really you can only really control by having good staff awareness and training processes in place. Storage media, how to handle them, that's 7.10, for example. Well, that may have some technical aspects, some software aspects. You might have some things, lists, for example, where you highlight how you can do that. You might have CMDBs, configuration management databases and things where you actually group your assets. But to manage it properly and to link it with the day-to-day business is, again, a people aspect. So you can see in yellow here, what I've highlighted is pretty much every single control. The technical controls there, not all of them are related to people aspects that heavily, like user and endpoint devices. Yes, if you technically control it, you could say that's something that the user doesn't even have to do anything about. It's just given to the user in the secure way. They don't have to actually manipulate that at all. But you know, when it comes to VPN, for example, I know that there's certain organizations that really have that as an optional thing where staff can still turn it off. So once again, it's an awareness campaign required for then the staff to actually use the VPN settings. And yeah, it's not just the technical tool that you can provide to them. Here you can see some other ones that I've highlighted that are people and process related quite heavily. Data leakage prevention, for example, I mentioned the controls there could be how to train staff not to have certain conversations in certain areas, in certain open public spaces, for example. That's also to do with data leakage prevention. So again, it's not just the technical controls there. If we continue on with those technical controls, here are some of them that actually also have a heavy people or process aspect. So use of privileged utility programs, who do we dedicate those privileges to? And also the outsourced development. So if you have an external partner actually producing the development of software and other activities, you need to do due diligence on that supplier. And of course, that's quite heavily a business related activity. So process and people related. So the same kind of counts for the ISO 27035. That's the other standard we talked about. Again, that also has some heavy process and people aspect. You can see here the overview of basic concepts, but also then objectives of incident management, the structured approach, adaptability, capabilities, communication, documentation. You can see here there's a heavy people and process aspect to that. And when it comes to the process in that particular standard, it's all about responding, lessons learned, preparing, planning. So again, there's quite a lot of focus on the actual element of the human being in all of that, because they need to be coming to the party to respond to an incident, right, and to manage it. And then another final overview around that is where you could see some real life situations around capabilities of organizations. And this is from one of the PCB partners there that I've highlighted some statistics, and they've produced this little mini report where it says 65% of organizations can actually detect an incident in the organization effectively. Now that means 35% are unaware of incidents actually occurring because they're not logged properly, or they're not centrally monitored, they're not actually visible in a central tool. Whatever the reason is, pretty much 65% can detect. And you can see here some other interesting statistics. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of this detail. You'll be able to review these slides, of course, about when the recordings come through from PCB. But yeah, there's pretty shocking situations here. So where you probably say the other shocking one is this 57% being capable to advise or guide businesses. So that means that actually information security teams that are actually able to speak the language of the business. And that comes to my final points, where I'll highlight a few of those points. And that is the cultural and knowledge gap between senior leaders and information security staff. When we talk about transferring knowledge, creating a different culture around information security, there's a serious, not just knowledge gap amongst senior leadership about cyber. It's pretty much a bedazzling issue, because the content is constantly changing. So senior leaders in an organization really find it a struggle to keep abreast of all the changes in the language around it, the technical acronyms, etc. And then the cultural gap, meaning, well, these senior leaders are typically of a different age group, of a different background, compared to the young and vibrant cybersecurity experts that you might be either having in your organization or that work for the external partner that you might be working with. So these things become quite challenging. And so my final slide before I hand back over to Loris and also to the Q&A, we're actually quite short in time, as I can see here. So maybe Loris, you can also condense yours up like I did a little bit, because we want some of those questions. My final slide here is, why does a car have brakes? This is a slide I use with a lot of senior leadership teams. Why does a car have brakes? Loris, why does a car have brakes? Maybe you can answer it for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that we have just to be aware of what could be the threats, and make sure that.
Yeah, but why does an actual car have brakes? That's my question.
Okay. Yeah, I can see. I don't know. I can see. Yeah, a lake.
Well, but the answer that you might be thinking, maybe you take this very serious, but my simple question was, why does a car have brakes? Often people think to slow down the car, to stop the car, to prevent incidents, to be safe. My answer to this question is, a car has brakes so you can drive faster. If the car didn't have brakes, you'd have to drive very, very slowly. And a business needs to understand, with good information security controls, it can keep growing, it can keep selling, it can keep promising things to the world without very quickly sliding down if suddenly something goes wrong. And over-promising is a serious tendency of smaller, agile organizations. So that's my final slide there, that you might be able to use in your presentations to senior leadership as a community there. All right, I'm handing back to Loris. Let's have a way. I'll skip these because these are pretty much a summary of what I mentioned earlier. So Loris, you want to highlight a few technical aspects and then we see what questions are there?
Yeah, just to remind that the technical aspects remain to just mandatory, put in place a set of mandatory documents to just structure information security management system, and also to think about out of the recalls that could be an evidence of how we operate on daily basis, and how we evidence the all aspects that we have put in place as a documentation that lead us to be compliant with these standards. Also, the last one, yes, here is just how we organize the team, and how we organize also all aspects of incident management, handling, and process, so that we can make sure that we have also a skilled people, a skilled organization, in order to handle the information security incidents when it occurs. And after, the last one is just the complementarity that we can see between what is the requirements and what is also how the guidance could be, so that we can handle the effectiveness of the incident management process. So the ISO 27001 defined requirements that is relating to the, for example, as Rinske said, there is some control that are related to the incident management. When we see in the Annex A, we can just, here we have a complementary guidance to make sure that we are meeting all those requirements in order to make sure that we build a cyber resilience structure. So I think that's all regarding all phases of incident management. Once we have also the team, it will be good for us to deal with. Here we have some case studies. Here is just to define a cyber strategy and to make sure that all people are sufficiently trained and are aware of all those kind of incidents that could be come from events that could be led us to detect some information security incidents. So how to define a framework or a program that could be led us to deal with this information security incidents. Thanks. Here also for Q&A, yeah.
Loris, did you want to share any more case studies?
Yes. Yeah, case study as well. Yeah, most of the time is just globally. Here we have defined also the strategy on how to deal with and to get prepared to any kind of incidents occurrence, so that we can make sure that the people, we are the right people, the skilled people, and the appropriate people that could be aware of how to deal, to detect, to analyze, to assess, and to respond to these incidents. So that's why we have defined also some structure, some process, and some also training, and recommend also some technical capability that they can just gain in order to handle information security incidents when it occurs.
We might, Loris, we might leave it for the case studies for people to read afterwards, like after the session,
Yes.
if that's all right, because I think there's some questions and we only have a few minutes left. So I'll hand back to, I think, to Jedmir if he wants to give us the Q&A. Well, the questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Rinske and Loris, for delivering this highly informative webinar. We had quite a lot of questions asked from the audience, so without further ado, I'll take some time to address questions from our attendees. Question number one, are manual walkarounds even possible in today's digital world, where more or less every business process is relying on technology?
You want me to answer that one?
Go ahead, you can carry on.
Yeah, look, I spend a lot of my time doing business continuity planning, and manual workarounds are getting more important because DR was the old strategy, right? Oh, there's one data center or server room flooded or affected. Now we instate our system somewhere else and we redirect the users to that other external environment, or that different data center. That was the old DR situation. With cybersecurity risk, you find that replication between sites and between environments, or actually compromised accounts, could be affecting all environments, like your your production, your development, your DR, etc. So you actually have more need for manual workarounds these days because you just don't have a fallback if your whole environment is affected or infected, I should say. It is possible, and it does require actual focus. It also requires a lot of prioritization because as the person who asked the question highlighted, it's harder and harder to come up with manual ways to do things. So you have to label beforehand what business processes and what systems do we really need to find workarounds for, and which business activities can be stopped. And I actually have changed my business impact analysis related question in terms of asking people what are time critical processes or activities. I now ask people what can be stopped, in case of an incident. And it's the reverse question, but it prompts people to think, yeah, what can actually be completely parked and we don't focus on it. So that's one way to do it, to remove all the non-essential, non-time critical activities from your list and start really with the things that do need a fallback process. Now then, manual workarounds can mean sometimes using a different technical system. So I see a lot of organizations having a technical system, like an advanced application, like for example, a CMS or an ERP system, where the fallback is a dump in a PDF on a email that they get in their inbox. So they can still use potentially email, but not the actual CRM system. That means they still have the data in a different format using different technical applications, for example, Excel or Word or whatever, or email. So that could be manual workarounds as well, I would say, or initial workarounds, where instead of one technology system, you use another one. So yeah, that may be one of your strategies there. I hope that answered the question. Anything else?
Loris, do you have anything
It
to add?
depends also. Yeah, it depends. It depends also in the way that you can just to use something that could be the people are familiar with in order to respond very quickly to the incidents or any need when it occurs, because there is some challenging also in the familiarity that we can have in the way to use some means. So that's why it's very important to also know how and what could be the simple manner that people are familiar with in order to deal with all matter of this that could be incurred.
Thank you, Loris and Rinske. One last question, if we get the time. What challenges can one encounter when auditing an organization that is transitioning from the ISO 27001:2013 version to the ISO 27001:2022 version, and what to do in those cases?
Yeah, I'll take that for starters quickly. I've recently conducted an audit like that, a certification process. And I think one of the key challenges that the client has is that there's for some clauses, for example, around internal audit, that's one clause in the ISO 27001 standard, there is so much more detail there that the requirements on how to do internal audits and the actual reporting around it, the frequency, the methods, there's a lot more requirement to it. So whilst they had internal auditing in place and it complied with what was required for the 2013 version, suddenly with the 2022 version, it's like, oh my goodness, there's a lot more here. Same with management reviews. We were able to do that fairly generically before. Now there's a whole list of actual guidance that the standard provides. And I can roll off probably another 5 or 6 areas where the current clause that actually was there, the previous one, is now a lot more beefed up, more detailed. And then, of course, those new controls. There's about 14 new controls that need to be implemented. So around threat intelligence, web filtering, all sorts of new things. And so that's probably the main 2 things to look at when you're migrating. Any new controls, completely new ones, and also those more detailed ones. So really putting one version against the other one and to go, what are the changes? And then looking in your information security management system where the capabilities are, or the lack of in that context. Loris, do you have any experience with that as well, where people are finding it a challenge?
Yes, I think that's for the migration between the version. The way I think that the efficient way that we found out with the team is that to orient people in the way they have previously implement the previous version. So we are not just delete all those documentation. No, just to go back to the previous one, to add a topic as a new control as a new topic in the current documents for the latest version, and to make sure that in how many how in the what way it could be incorporated in that document, and when we can also manage with other document when it comes to refer to another control or another documented control in the other side. But here we have just to mention that moving or migrating from the previous one to the new one is not necessary to delete all that you have done in the previous one. It's just to have a gap analysis that you can put in place in order to know which kind of or which new control can be inserted in the existing documentation in order to growing up to the existing or the actual or the current version. So it was the exercise that we have made in order to make sure that the client is not just lost in how to interpret this new version, but to know how to incorporate and to delete one or the new one or to old one, and how to fit them in order to go through the new or the latest version. No way or no necessary to do a deletion of the previous one. No, just to know how to incorporate some new controls in the existing document in order to align with the latest version of the standard.
Thank you.
If there is also the terminology, you can just change the terminology and change also the way to explain them in the documentation so that you can just comply with the new version.
Thank you, Loris and Rinske, for this highly informative webinar. I truly enjoyed it. Now, please be informed that this session is recorded and will be posted on our website and YouTube channel, along with the slides of the presentation. Thank you all for being a part of this webinar.
Thanks, you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rinske.
Merry Christmas,
Thank you
everyone.
all. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.